Good afternoon, Teresa.
Good afternoon, Pamela. Happy
Please,
solstice.
happy solstice. What is that?
Solstice is a wonderful, wonderful event that happens every year, actually twice a year, but the summer solstice is the greatest release of light for the year. And it's when the sun is at its spiritual and energetic zenith, you could say. And the sun creates and generates and sustains life with so much light and love from Almighty God. And uh, and so I think it's very apropos that we're having our conversation on solstice. I have a wonderful awareness that came to me as I was rereading the chapter 3 of Climb the Highest Mountain. And I would like to preface this with the awareness that Incal, which is like Inca with an L, was the awareness of the sun that the Atlanteans gave their great respect and worship to, the understanding of God as the sun. And this is where the name Inca comes from. And so, excuse me, I spent a lot of uh, focus on this chapter 3 of Climb the Highest Mountain, which was given to us by Mark Prophet and Elizabeth Clare Prophet. They actually wrote this book back, I believe it was very early 70s. And they did this in the island of Maui. I understand that they did a lot of this work under the volcano in Maui. And so there is tremendous teaching in this book. It's a foundational book for the Summit Lighthouse. And this chapter 3 in particular completely explains and gives us guidance in this time that we are living in right now in our world. I thought it was an interesting concept and reality that there is teaching from the Master Alexander Gaylord, who serves as at the Department of Psychology and Geopolitical Science at the Royal Teton Retreat. And I thought, isn't it interesting that the masters are putting these two concepts together, geopolitical events and psychology? And we're about to have a conference at the Summit Lighthouse that's called The Environment of the Soul, and that's focusing on the healing of the soul, which is the psyche, which is the definition of psychology, the science of the soul. And we're also facing a tremendously challenging geopolitical scene at this time on the planet with all that we have going on with war and everything else that we see going on. And so I found that the teaching in this Climb the Highest Mountain, Chapter 3, was exactly what we need. The book begins with the description of a heap of confusion, and it delineates the difference between the real self and the synthetic self. And it gives us this journey that is not just for ourselves and our soul, though of course it is, but also for our nation and for the planet. And so we can understand that people are longing for the concept and the reality of the golden age. And we're tapping into an ancient awareness. There were many golden age civilizations that took place on this planet and then that are going on other planets. And you cannot have a golden age without being one with the consciousness of the sun, because the sun is the origin and the point of return of the golden age. It's an age of solar awareness and Christ consciousness. And so we see that there is this desire, great desire for the golden age, which Saint Germain has told us is intended to come upon planet Earth. And we're praying that it comes into the physical plane, physical, and not just on the etheric plane, because we know that the golden age is happening in celestial cities around the planet that are on the etheric plane. There are a number of cities, I believe 7, across the various oceans and continents of the world. So there are souls evolving on inner levels that are basically attached to Earth in etheric retreats and etheric cities, and they are already having the experience of the golden age there, but we are not seeing it yet in our physical plane, and there's a reason for that. And as you move through this chapter, which is a quite significant chapter in terms of length and breadth and depth, you start to understand what is really taking place. Now, it also became clear to me as I was reading this chapter that this was the primary book that Mark wrote with Mother. And it was, I believe it was their first work together, major work together. And in this book, he brought forth so many concepts that were like the seeds for all of the work that she did later, meaning that I believe this book seeds all of the dictations and lectures and everything that came after. The original blueprint and matrix is in this book, and this chapter in particular has a great relevance. So I'd like to go into what I learned, if that works for you, and share what I can remember. And
Yes.
so, yes, okay. So basically, the book speaks about how in the early root race experiences of mankind, we had spoken in a previous program about the 3 root races that had evolved on planet Earth and returned to God. These are soul groups or soul mandalas. And so the purpose of creation, the purpose of God creating sons and daughters and giving us this opportunity to evolve, was so that we could gain experience in time and space, gain mastery and self-mastery, experience love with our twin flame, and basically move up the chain of cosmic hierarchy. And so there's a very important point that's made here in the book. And this point has to do with the fact that in the Golden Age consciousness, which was anchored in the Garden of Eden on Lemuria with the master and under the tutelage of the master Lord Maitreya before the fall of man. And the idea was that people would gain mastery by continuously trying to outdo themselves. And I was remembering this morning the quote that was given to us by Shah Ara, who is the master of the Persian retreat. And right now we're definitely focusing on Iran and praying for this light of Persia to return. And he said, "Learn to love, to do well, and you shall." And so this was really the consciousness of the Golden Age civilizations and the early root races. You were here not to compete with others, but to compete against your own self, if you will, to rise up in Christhood. And so what happened was that at the time of the 4th root race, there was the fall of the angels, and Mark explains that in another book he is being given the records of Akasha from the keeper of the scrolls, which is interesting. And so the fall happened because of this archangel, I believe he was an archangel, Peshualga, who fell. He was the original fall. He fell and had resentment against God because he lost his son. And the book explains that if he had waited, his son would have returned, in perhaps in a new form, in a new way, but he didn't have the patience to wait upon the Lord. He then influenced the archangel who was known as Luciel to fall, and Luciel became Lucifer. And then there was a great fall that ensued, and that included many other fallen angels that we're aware of. And I do need to bring these names up and these concepts up because it's such an important part of understanding the story. So there was Satan, there was serpent, and there were others like Beelzebub, Moloch, etc. And we're calling for Archangel Michael to come and encircle all of that creation, miscreation of rebellion. So anyway, what happened was that when the fall came in, it happened while mankind, God's creation, was evolving on Lemuria, on the ancient continent of Lemuria. And these ones came in and they perverted the consciousness, and they basically drew men and women, God's creation, away from their real self into the synthetic image. And it was really a bringing down of the energies from the third eye down into the lower chakras, and from the heart, all of the energies above the heart down into the lower chakras. So how this went on was that there was a great warring on Lemuria, because the priesthood of Lemuria became infected with this Luciferian consciousness, which was very pride-based and competitive-based, competing against each other. And so there was this war of the priests, and it was also a war that misused the science of the spoken word, the sacred sword. And so as these priests would war against each other, they created grotesque forms like what we find on Easter Island and elsewhere. And so we have a situation where this whole thing eventually led to the sinking of Lemuria. And there was also the murder of the Divine Mother on Lemuria, we know from the teachings. And Mark Prophet explains that this was a sin against the mother, the sinking of Lemuria. So it sunk through steam belts and cataclysm that involved steam, and the entire continental shelf went under in one night. And those who were still connected to their God self and who were aware that this was coming sang Auld Lang Syne. And so Auld Lang Syne is an ancient melody that was intended to help soothe the souls as this cataclysm was taking place, so that they could return also in future times. And so we had this going on with Lemuria, and then we had another situation come forth with Atlantis. Atlantis was the next continent that rose up, and Atlantis was around for a long, long time, and there were several golden ages on Atlantis, including one under the Master Jesus. And so the situation with Atlantis was that it was during the time of Atlantis that there was a situation that came forth with the Maldakians. Now, Maldek was a planet that was between Jupiter and Mars that also had a great amount of light and sponsorship of God that was also perverted by the Luciferian consciousness. And so they came in and they basically developed an ultra materialistic society and a very scientific society, but they did not worship the sun god Incal. They did not worship the god of Helios and Vesta. They did not worship their own higher self. They wanted it to be for the glory of the human, not for the glory of God. And so this eventually led the entire planet to go down, and they literally obliterated their planet with nuclear weapons. And what the book explains is that all of these things that we see coming again were happening on Maldek. And so a third of the souls of Maldek were able to come back to Earth. Were able to come to Earth, and the masters called it a planetary invasion, because they said that where Earth was at that time attracted that. And so I know this is heavy, information in a way, but it's important to understand it because then the masters give us the solution as to how to overcome all of this, and bring forth the true golden age. And so I do have to go through this history a little bit so that you can understand what we're dealing with. 2/3 of the souls on Maldek went through what's called the second death, meaning that they were canceled out and were not allowed to reincarnate. 1/3 was allowed to come into Earth. And so they have, and the teachings explain that many of these souls reincarnated in what's now the Middle East, but they are all over the planet too. A lot of them had very high attainment, but they did not have the real worship of God. They did not have the real giving of the glory to God. And so we see even today some of these scientists saying, you know, the sun is a problem. We want to block out the sun. We want to have chemtrails. We want to geoengineer the weather. We want to go to Mars because we don't want to, you know, we are afraid the sun is going to burn up this entire planet. And these are people who don't have the true awareness of the sun as a benevolent force. And here we are on solstice, and I'm talking about the benevolence of the sun. And there was an archai, there is an archai, Holy Amethyst, who gave us a beautiful journey to the sun. It's described in the book, The Masters in the Path. And so she describes how we can be taken in our finer vehicles to the sun of Helios and Vesta, and welcomed with the most loving heart of our Father, Mother, God. And so we have to understand that the sun is benevolent. The sun is not malevolent. And yet these ones have an enmity with the sun. And so, and I think it stems back to this old psychology and consciousness that was there even on Maldek. And so now we see that these ones came in, and the masters called them the laggards. They were lagging behind the consciousness of their Christ self. And they came in, and they brought with them tremendous technology and science that was also present back in Maldek. And when we look at what's going on in the world today, we see a complete repeat. They had test tube babies. They could fly cars. They had tremendous weapons of war. They knew how to split the atom and create nuclear weapons. They had just a tremendous amount of technology, and so they come in and they bring all of this back with them, but there isn't a full commitment to the true golden age, which is the true communion with Helios and Vesta, and with the light of Christ, and with the consciousness of Christ that was espoused by our founding fathers in America. And so America was founded on the rock of Christ. And we have to be aware of these dynamics, because I think a lot of this is going on at the subconscious level even, and these ones may not even be completely aware of their motivation or the past life records that are influencing them. And we know from the teachings that America is Atlantis come again, and so we're dealing with the same kind of situation. And so when these ones came on Atlantis, they brought all of this with them, and there was genetic engineering. We know there were these, quote, mythological creatures, half man, half animal, etc., that were not mythological. There was all kinds of misuses of sound, and misuses of weaponry, and misuses of the rays, like, for example, cosmic rays, and using rays for warfare, or different kinds of manipulation on the four lower bodies of man. And so now Atlantis lost its golden age because of these influences. And Atlantis had 3 different cataclysms that ultimately brought it down over a period of something like 200,000 years. It was not a quick thing. And in the middle, there were some golden ages. We hear of the story of Rai Ernan and the Swernis, and how they had great ability to even precipitate their food and have a golden age civilization. Jesus Christ was a golden age emperor on Atlantis, I believe twice, actually. And so there were all of these amazing chapters that happened within the great drama of Atlantis. But ultimately, Atlantis went down, and it went down with earthquake, and it went down with flooding. And this is what Plato even recorded. And I was listening to a commentator a couple of days ago who said we are at an Atlantean moment. And this is a Christian who's saying we're at an Atlantean moment. And this is, people are starting to put together the awareness of Atlantis and the flood of Noah. And so once again, we see this going on. And we need to understand how to come out of this conundrum that has been plaguing us. Now, Atlantis, the master said, was the misuse of the energies of the Father. And so also it became pretty clear reading this book that Sanat Kumara and the 144,000 from Venus came to Earth during the civilization of Atlantis, which I was not aware of. We have Lord Maitreya on Lemuria in the Garden of Eden, and then we have Sanat Kumara coming in at a very low point of Earth's humanity, where people had regressed to where they were practically walking on all fours, or they were, and it was a very bestial kind of consciousness. And so what we see in this book and the understanding that the masters give us, including Shah Ra from his Persian retreat, is that consciousness determines where people will go, and that the Luciferians and the various bands of fallen ones basically influenced mankind's consciousness first through the astral plane, and then into the physical plane. And so we understand that what we take in as our entertainment, as our music, as our consciousness, video games, etc., becomes the reality we create. We can also see this happening even more so now with the advances that are going on in artificial intelligence, which are happening so fast. And this whole idea that we see happening now, where AI becomes our co-pilot. I see this everywhere now, your AI co-pilot. And that is a complete laggard concept, because God is our co-pilot. Our Christ self is our co-pilot. And we must not forsake that. This is why these civilizations fell. They made technology, and alien technology, you can call it that, the new gods. And I heard one of them say, we don't need gods, we don't need anything but man and technology. And this is a perversion. This is a perversion, because what do we have if we don't have God? And so this is the why in the road where we are right now, on a planetary scale, on a national scale, and even on a personal scale. And this is going to be presented as this why in the road for everyone, including the youth of the world, who will be lured into all kinds of artificial intelligence-based games and schemes and recreating of realities. I mean, you already see this with some of the things on Facebook, etc. And people have to be pulled out of that and brought back to their soul awareness and their soul, their loyalty to their I am presence and to the Holy Christ self. And I think a lot of the young people being born and even like in the last 20-30 years have a tremendous spiritual awareness on some level, but they are being railroaded into these places instead of really being given the message and the hope and the love of the mighty I am presence and the Holy Christ self and the entire brotherhood of light that is working with us from the etheric plane. And so one of the things that the masters speak of in this book, and I'm saying masters because Linello or Mark Prophet was working with several who are giving him distinct teaching for this chapter. And it was about how we have to understand, just like Confucius said, and I actually heard the Pope say it this week too, we have to start with changing ourselves, our heart, and our souls. The change starts from ourselves first. We have to change the microcosm. Gandhi also said it. You have to be the change you want to be in the world, you want to see in the world. And so it begins within. And we know from Gautama Buddha and the masters that we have access to the law of the one. The Buddhic mathematic principle is that when you have the power of the 3 times 3 and you then have you bring it to the power of 0, which he calls the perfection of indifference, you get the law of the one. And we know from Saint Germain that the law of the one is I am the law of the one, and therefore I'm one with every other one who is within that one, and the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood. And so through the law of the one, when we change, the world changes. And this is something that these fallen angel influences, laggard influences, and all of that, and even robot mechanized man creations can't keep up with, because it takes them out of that level of reality that they're functioning through. And so we have the law of the one, we must be the change. And what we see going on is that this battle that was happening on a macrocosmic level also happens within us, where we are taken away from the upper chakras, from our consciousness being anchored in our heart and in our third eye, and brought down to the lower chakras, where we're dealing with all of the mass psychology and all of the wants of our solar plexus, and the attacks on the soul and the seat of the soul, and ultimately the misuse of the base of the spine chakra, which is the sex, drugs, rock and roll culture that pounds away at our sacred fire rising, the Kundalini, that needs to rise back up into the higher pyramid of self, right? And so the third eye is key. The third eye is very much key. And this book teaches us that without vision, the people perish. And without the consciousness of the immaculate concept being held in the third eye, we are taken down. And so somehow we have to be able to look at all of these events going on in our life and on the planet, and we have to be able to hold the immaculate concept, and we have to anchor the this awareness of we are raised up, and as we are raised up, we raise up so many others, and we have to do this in order to defeat what's going on that has happened again and again. The prophecy that Saint Germain gave us for the Golden Age is that the Golden Age in the earth is intended to be permanent when we finally get it. And so we don't know what we're going to have to go through to get it, but we know that when we do, it will be locked in permanently. And we know that this will be a great boon and a great blessing for our beloved Helios and Vesta, the Father, Mother, God, and our Son. And this is what we are endeavoring to do. And so I would just like to open this up if you have any questions, because I know I've covered so much material, but I wanted to give you the awareness of what hidden gems and teachings and keys are in this one chapter of this magnificent book, which is really foundational to the teachings of the Ascended Masters and the Summit Lighthouse.
Thank you.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The big
No, now I can.
question, the big question is, how do we overcome our synthetic self and our dark side? And what's the goal?
Okay. So the goal is we have to understand that we have as a soul, every good thought and feeling and action that we do registers and is permanently anchored within our causal body of light, which is the great spheres of light and color bands above us that are our treasures in heaven. All of the negative thoughts, feelings, and actions that we have done, whether in this life or in previous lives, is locked into the electronic belt. The electronic belt is like um, a kettle drum of heavy, dark energies that are around our lower self and that are there waiting to be transmuted. Now, Jesus explains, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And so the masters and our own Christ self do not release to us more than we can handle at a time. And so we are intended, as this energy comes up, as these records come up, they may make us not feel well. They may make us even feel, unwell emotionally or physically or mentally, etc. Or they come forth as karmas that have to be balanced. And we are given this tremendous gift and tool and boon of the violet flame. Saint Germain, the Master Saint Germain, to help us prepare for a golden age, gave us this most beautiful energy called the violet flame, and the violet flame is the transmutation of lead into gold, of dark into light. And so, in order to have this transmutation of the synthetic self, we have to really use the violet flame, and we have to keep focusing on the good. We have to understand that we can't be, like Jesus told us, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We do have to understand the equation that's going on and the way history has repeated itself, but we also have to understand that in this time we're given a way out, and that way out is through self-transformation and through the use of the violet flame, and through holding this immaculate concept and this vision where we don't get so bogged down. I was reading yesterday, I believe it was a quote by the Goddess of Liberty, where she is talking to us again about this very point. It's very easy when you look at the news to get your energies down, down, down. And we can't be like ostriches with our head in the sand. We have to know what's going on so we make the call, but we also have to be very careful not to over engage in this. At some level, the masters explained to us that this is unreal. I remember reading a teaching by Gautama Buddha where he said, we as masters don't get caught up in this as much as you do, obviously, because we're, first of all, we're incarnate, but second of all, they keep their vibration and their consciousness at a high level. And that's something we have to learn to do. And that's something I've been endeavoring to do better with myself, because it's easy for me to see what's going on and to get dragged down. And we have to not be dragged down. We have to keep focusing on that third eye. Remember David and Goliath, and how David slew Goliath because he, the rock went into the third eye of Goliath. We have to have our third eye become the focus of Christ, become the focus of the reality that we wish to see, which is the golden age. And we have to first and foremost work on ourselves. Does that answer the question a little bit? Do you have other
Yes.
questions about it?
So you mentioned the violet flame. Maybe people might want to know more about what that is.
Okay. So the violet flame is a spiritual energy that vibrates at a frequency just beyond the physical eyes. And the violet flame can be invoked through mantras, decrees, and songs. And the violet flame is an action that literally consumes, transmutes the sticky dark stuff between our atom cells, electrons, and molecules. The Seven Light House has beautiful violet flame decrees. They have wonderful violet flame services. You can find more teachings about the violet flame there. I also created a website a long time ago called violetflamemiracles.com, and you're certainly welcome to go there as well and learn about the violet flame. It's really important to understand that it's helpful to actually speak the violet flame. the spoken word, the sword, when Jesus says, I come not to bring peace but a sword, he was talking about the spoken word. And the spoken word is a sword. And I'm quoting again from the book Climb the Highest Mountains here. And so we want to use our spoken word. We want to use our power of sound to create. The power of sound is the power that creates, and we want to basically invoke the violet flame. And so that's what I would say. I can tell you one experience I had, which was when I was in Argentina as a young woman. Um, I went and sat down with a group of people that were giving violet flame decrees, and I had never experienced anything like it before. And by the time we were finished with about 2 hours of violet flame decrees, I had such an extraordinary transformation in my being, and I had such a blissful exhilaration in God. And I knew when I experienced that violet flame that I had found everything that I was looking for. I'd been searching spiritually for a long time in many different ways, and the masters were bringing me closer and closer to the path and the teachings. But when I experienced the violet flame, I knew there was nothing else like it. And that this was the all in all. It's the all in all that Saint Germain gave us. And so with the violet flame, we can transmute not only these records that come up for us personally, and that are part of, what a lot of young people now are talking about generational curses. Well, anyway, it's really what family tendencies are passed down again and again that are not, conducive to a better life. That can all be transmuted with the violet flame. What we see on the planet can also be transmuted with the violet flame. We've been told that there are beings on another planet, I'm not exactly sure where in our universe, called the Violet Planet. And these ones were faced with situations on Earth that were as bad or worse as what we are experiencing today. And they engage in the violet flame. They gave enough violet flame to save their planet. And the great ruler of that planet is called Omri Tas, and he actually puts his presence, his aura over the Earth once a month, and we invite him to come back on the 23rd of the month also, which is the day the masters have told us the karma really congeals on the 23rd. There's a new descent of karma every month. And so we see these priests and priestesses of the sacred fire coming forth from other systems of worlds. There's also a retreat over the island of Cuba in the physical where there are beings of light called the priesthood of Melchizedek, which is actually in the Bible, and the Catholics refer to the priesthood of Melchizedek, and they are priests of the sacred fire of the violet flame. We also have Zarathustra, and this is again a spirituality or a religion that was in ancient Persia, where they were invoking that sacred fire, and the sacred fire that comes forth as the violet color, the violet frequency, which is the freedom flame, frees us from our karmas, frees us from these past life records, frees us from all that we see happening. And if we didn't have the violet flame, we wouldn't be able to recreate history in a way that transcends the errors of the past. We need to get beyond this. We need to get beyond Maldek. We need to get beyond the laggard consciousness. We need to get beyond the Luciferian fall. We need to get beyond the competition of the priests on Lemuria. We need to get beyond the misuses of science and the egotism that was present on Atlantis, and all of the perversions there. We need to get beyond all of that. And the only way to really do that is to put it in the violet flame. And we know once again through the law of the one that you don't have to have necessarily a large amount of people doing it, though it would be nice. But it's really about the quality and not the quantity as much, because anything given in quality to God can be multiplied billions of times over. And there was a teaching, though. I had a friend who was a part of the I Am movement. The violet flame was first given to the I Am movement in the 1930s, and they actually did violet flame decrees every night during the World War II. And the masters later told him in a dictation through Mama Ballard that the decrease of the violet flame greatly shortened World War II. And so the violet flame is absolutely essential. And back in those days in Chicago, there were thousands of people who were giving violet flame. And so we're at a time now where if you go online and you look up violet flame decrees, violet flame services, there's a lot out there on YouTube and elsewhere. And I encourage you to connect with the Summit Lighthouse if you want more information about that.
Thank you. I guess a last question I have would be how to make this practical. How would I live my day? You know, someone who's listening and they're new to this. How can I put it in my life and live it? How can I help?
You mean the violet flame or all of
I
it?
guess I would say everything that you're talking about. How can I? Again, I'm going to speak for a listener who cares and wants to make a difference, wants to come up higher for themselves and for humanity. What can I do?
Good question. I would say remember that the most important thing that the masters have told us is our intention. First of all, to have a pure intention, a good intention. Even we make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. That's why they say to err is human and to forgive is divine. And we really need that forgiveness from our own, even our own higher self. But the intention counts for so much. So if your intention is to do well, and you shall, like Sha'ara tells us. I'm sorry, no, Casimir Poseidon, though I'm sure Sha'ara also told us that. Casimir Poseidon, he was a great ruler back in the old days. Um, and I'm trying to remember now it's evading me where he was. There were civilizations of light. He was in the Amazon, I believe. There were civilizations of light in the Amazon, in Africa, and all these different places where. So we have a lot of records on the planet of golden age civilizations. We don't just have the records of these falls that took place, but we're at a juncture in time and space where both are happening, and we have to make the choice: which record are we going to reinvoke and precipitate and congeal here? Now the situation with a new person, I would say, if you're new to these teachings, read up on the books. God will help you, direct you into where you need to go to find the right book that will help you. You want to absorb the consciousness of the masters by reading. Reading is very good to absorb that consciousness. There are so many books that they have given us through the Summit Lighthouse. Read up on them. I have some books too that you can look at. It's called booksforaquarius.com. There's a lot of teaching there too. But we want to read up. We want to understand that, have our consciousness filled with the concepts and the consciousness of the masters. I've also been having a lot of fun looking at the TSL encyclopedia. If you look it up, there are so many things that you can find there that are wonderful tidbits of information. In fact, I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a game like the old game of Trivial Pursuit, except this would be not Trivial Pursuit, and we could look at all these different concepts and how we can learn so much that way. So I think that's one thing. The next thing is to really pick a master, choose a master. You can have several, but really look at if you wanted to have a master friend. I mean, many people are going to say, for me, it's Jesus or Mary. If you're in the East, you might say Buddha or Kuan Yin. Whoever is the master that you feel closest to. El Moria is very much attached to the Summit Lighthouse and previous dispensations of the Brotherhood in this last century. So find the master that you feel resonates with you the most. There's a wonderful book called Lords of the Seven Rays. It goes through the seven rays. You might say Saint Germain is my master, or the one I want to be connected to, and really start to study about them. And these are some of the things that you can do. It's important to engage your consciousness into the ascended master frequency and vibration and yes, plane of consciousness, because you want to be able to pull up from this earthly plane. The Christians use the Bible a lot to do that as well. And there's wonderful, wonderful teaching in the Bible that helps us to stay afloat above all of these things that I mentioned previously. It's almost like you take refuge in the Word, and Gautama Buddha teaches us that we take refuge in the Buddha, who's the teacher, who's the master of your choice. We take refuge in the Dharma, which is the teaching, so the teaching of your choice, and we take refuge in the Sangha, which is the community of the Holy Spirit, which is why we have these wonderful events like the conferences and other events where people can come together and know that they are not walking alone, even in the physical. They're walking with God, but they're also walking with brothers and sisters who are walking this path. Yeah.
I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else you think might be helpful for people to know?
I would like for people to consider and visualize the threefold flame of love, wisdom, and power that is the divinity in our heart. It's the spark of life, the spark of God that God gave to us that animates our being. It's what makes us God. It's what makes us sons and daughters of God. It's what makes us children of God. It's the divine essence. And then understand that this threefold flame is also at the level of our Christ self, at the level of our I am presence. It's also at the level of every ascended being. Every ascended master has this magnificent threefold flame. And when you consider the sun of our system, the sun that we look at out the window or on our walks, you can remember this magnificent threefold flame of our Father, Mother, God, Helios and Vesta that is in the sun. And it's just this beautiful color of pink, blue, and gold that weaves together with the white of the Divine Mother and creates a beautiful mother of pearl resurrection spiral. And I think that if we can hold that vision of every time we look at the sun of this brilliant threefold flame and resurrection spiral, pulling earth out of the muck of all these things that we are seeing and continuously re-establishing this idea that the sun is our friend. There was a teaching on St. Patrick where St. Patrick was having to deal with tremendously dark and difficult forces at the time. Those were the serpents he was casting out of Ireland. They were actually people who were embodying that serpent Luciferian consciousness, powerful people who wanted him dead. And he had many miracles and all. But I remember at one point he was faltering, he was very discouraged. And Jesus came to him and said, pray to Helios. Now they spelt it Helias with an A, Helias. And St. Patrick made that connection with Helios and Vesta as the empowerment that he needed to get beyond the darkness. El Moria, too, the Master Moria, tells us how when he was in embodiment, he spent a lot of time meditating on the sun every day and giving glory to the sun. And I know that I have been doing this, and I know many other friends who do this. Like I couldn't live without the sun, and I'm so thankful every time the sun comes out. It's like saying, hello to our Father, Mother, God. And we do have the sun center in our own being, which is our heart chakra. And so we need to remember that we are a part of a greater cosmic plan and a greater cosmos. And this cosmos and plan is run by our beloved Helios and Vesta in our particular solar system. And then beyond that, at the galactic level, we're dealing with Alpha and Omega. We're loving Alpha and Omega and receiving their impetus. And this is really what solstice is about. It's about the torch or the flame that is sent from Alpha and Omega, from the great central sun, from our Father, Mother, God, the beginning and the ending. And then it comes to Helios and Vesta, and this light is coming through during the solstice, and then it's released through our sun. And we have to understand that our sun is a very intelligent, luminous, loving presence, and not just something to be avoided. And so I'm thinking of this because of solstice, and I'm giving this great love to the sun, and I'm praying that, Helios told us, you need to become a son. We all need to become a son, S-U-N, and a son, S-O-N, a son of God. And so just think about that every day. Think about the sun, and loving that sun, and loving that sun within your own heart, and then having your third eye, your consciousness, your mental body affixed to the sun.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
You've been enlightened us.
Well, I have been greatly enlightened by reading this book, and I will keep reading it because there's so much there, and we realize the breadth of consciousness that the masters have is so tremendous, and we're really are we're learning. We're students. We're chelas. We're trying, and I'm aware too that more and more about how every time we go to sleep, our soul so many times is whisked up into the octaves of light, into the retreats, and even though we may not have a direct remembrance, sometimes I'll get little bits of consciousness, words, or even songs that come back. I'll wake up with songs coming into, I feel them in my aura, and I'm like, this was a message, or this was something I needed to anchor in particular. Um, anyway, the point is that we are taken, at least a third of our life is not happening here, but we're not just sleeping. We are evolving. We are being trained and tutored and given information and loved and healed in the retreats at night and in the ascended master realm of the higher planes. And so we're doing that, and this is how we keep on keeping on too. We don't want to. They actually tell us the etheric plane is more real than the physical plane, and so uh, we think this plane is so real, and it sure seems so real, but ultimately there is a more real plane for us waiting, and that we journey to regularly. And that's why people have an interest in the teachings to begin with. They've been trained, souls have been trained on the inner to look for this, to find this. And so once again, this is all part of a greater plan of God good for this planet and for the anchoring of the golden age of Saint Germain permanently. And that's, I think, how I want to finish today, because we're affirming the victory of the sun, the victory of the sun, S-U-N, and the victory of the sun, S-O-N, as a golden age manifest that will transcend everything else that we talked about earlier and bring in the golden age permanently this time, according to God's will. And that is the New Jerusalem. That is the consciousness of Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. We look forward to you coming back.
Okay, I look forward to it too.